Hi, everybody. I'm Yoni, Bloch. This is Steve Greenberg, who I'm going to interview today and explain our relationship through that interview. So I'll introduce you very quickly. Steve, when I got an introduction to him, he was actually the first, one of the first meetings I had in the US. I started a company, a startup 6 years ago now, and we got an introduction through Jeff Pulver to speak at a panel, a little like this, at South by Southwest, which is an amazing music and technology festival. And I was looking him up, and the musical side in me got very excited when I found out that Steve signed artists like Alanis Morissette, Katy Perry. He ran Columbia Records. He got fired from Columbia Records for using the internet, which I loved.
As marketing our music online.
Yeah. And he won the Grammys, was 6 times nominated, and I was like, maybe I shouldn't show him my company at all. Maybe I should play him some songs. There was like another side for the whole thing. For whoever who doesn't know, I'm also a musician in Israel. I've got a couple of albums, and that was what made this meeting so amazing, because I got there very excited, and it was my first visit to America, and just before I went, it was actually the first time in the US, so just before I went, a friend of mine that was helping us told me, listen, in America it's not like Israel. They will tell you it's amazing and they love it. It means they don't love it and they will never call you back. There's no directness. So we sit and I open my presentation and I put the first slide, and I'm very anxious and very excited. I was even wearing a jacket because I was told I need to look serious, and he wasn't, because it turns out the music industry doesn't work like that. And I was showing the first slide and I was explaining what it is. I haven't gotten to even really say, and he said, it's amazing, I love it, I'm gonna do it, it's amazing, you don't need to show me. And I'm, damn it, this is what they said. Turns out, Steve Greenberg used to watch Kochav Nolad to get his daughter to learn Hebrew. And he actually knew it because the first project we've ever done was with it. And couldn't have asked for a better introduction for someone that in the end is the biggest shaper of my company, but in many, many more ways was a pioneer in the music industry, taking advantage of technology way before anybody else would take it seriously, because everybody else wanted to sit comfortably in their places and make sure to keep the status quo. So as I said before, he got fired for it once. But my favorite story, and I like that I said that I'm going to interview Steve and then didn't let him even say a word. So my favorite story that he told me was how he came to record one of the most played ever, one of the most amazing and horrible songs. Horrible because it's played so much times. Who Let the Dogs Out? Can you share that story, Steve?
Yeah, am I on? Yeah. So first I wanted to say, the story Yoni told is true. I was in love with Yoni's technology before I ever met Yoni. My daughter played with his interactive technology on the Kochav Nolad site for hours and hours on end. It was completely engaged. So I had already market testing of his idea before I ever met him. So as soon as I met him, I said, yeah, I love you. Let's work together. And we have, which was a really nice story. The Who Let the Dogs Out story is very simple. We went to make the record, and the band that was making the record, they were wonderful singers, but they were horrible barkers. And Who Let the Dogs Out, of course, is dependent on a very powerful bark at its core. And I got very...
Does anybody not know Who Let the Dogs Out? Okay.
So I said to I was very frustrated with the band. I said, you guys got to bark better. The barks need to be louder and tougher. And the band finally got frustrated with me because I didn't like any of their barks. And they said, okay, Mr. Smarty Pants, if you think you're such a good barker, why don't you do it? So I said, okay, I will. And I went in, and so to this day, that's me barking on the record.
So you didn't know, coming in here, you didn't know you'll meet the person who barked in Who Let the Dogs Out. And he gets mad at me, do it. He takes, you can't afford it. Every time we go and meet someone, I'm like, he barked at Who Let the Dogs Out. And he's like, I also produced it and won a Grammy. And I'm like, but you barked at it, that's why.
I'll tell you a nice story about that, actually, then we'll get on with that technology. I was in Jerusalem a few years ago making a record in East Jerusalem with David Broza. And it was a record that we were making with half Palestinian musicians and half Israeli musicians. And we had a choir sing on the record of kids. And they were like, half of them were Muslim kids from East Jerusalem, half of them were Jewish kids from West Jerusalem. And they were all way too young to have even been alive when Who Let the Dogs Out was recorded. But when I came in to work with them on the record, somebody said, so, this is Steve, and he's from America, and he's a producer, and he produced some records that you may know, like Who Let the Dogs Out. And just spontaneously, all these kids together went, Who Let the Dogs Out? And to me, it was such a big thing, because you had like Jewish kids and Muslim kids, Israelis, Palestinians, united by Who Let the Dogs Out. And
by your bark.
For me, it was a very powerful moment.
And then peace came.
I wish. But anyway, so let's talk about music and technology.
So yeah, so the second story that I love that Steve pre-invented auto-tune. I don't know if you know what's auto-tune in singing. It's an invention in the early 2000s, mostly known by the song Do You Believe by Cher, where you make it was initially used to make sure that people can hit the notes. So one other act that Steve signed and produced that changed my teenage years was Mbop by Hanson. Does anybody don't know Mbop? Exactly. So now bark also. So he had a great moment there where he had to deal with the fact that the lead singer, who was 13 or 14, had his voice changing.
Yes, he was going through puberty and his voice was changing. And unfortunately, he was having trouble hitting the notes because his voice was changing. And we understood that he would never again be able to sing in the high key that we loved so much and that we loved the song sung in. So we kept trying to get the vocal out of him, and we got most of the vocal out of him. But in Mbop, there's this one incredibly high note in the middle of the song, and we kept trying, and as the days went by, we understood that it was less and less likely that he would ever be able to do it again, and we knew that in the future we'd have to lower the key of the song, but I really wanted the song recorded in the original key, so we did a little trick. We slowed the tape down, and he sang the note, and then we sped the tape up just for that note, and we managed to hit the note. So we sort of cheated in the most exciting note in Mbop. It's a little secret, which, by the way, Mbop was #1 or all around the world 20 years ago this week. So
even in Israel.
Even in Israel.
I actually had a shirt that said, "How pretty is the girl from Hanson?" Steve also later went to run Columbia Records, which is one of the greatest record companies.
And it is true that I got in trouble there for putting music up on the internet. We had a band called the Jonas Brothers, and I wanted to launch them through MySpace, and we made these videos, and we put them up on MySpace, and we let kids put them on their MySpace sites. And at the time, Columbia Records said, "You gave our music away for free on the internet," and they were like very upset about it, and they didn't understand that this was the future. And it was one of those great moments when you're sort of trying to explain a world that's about to come, but that hasn't come yet, and you're trying to explain it to people whose livelihood depends on that world not coming, right? They were so invested in the old world that was receding, and that's how they made their money, and that was a business that they understood and were the masters of, and they were very afraid of a new world that was coming, so they were doing everything they could to keep it from coming, including firing me.
But that was a good thing, because Steve went on to go back to his original record label, signed Joss Stone, which is, I don't know if less known in Israel, but a big deal here. Right now he has, actually and this comes from my company's side, so after that meeting he did call back. It wasn't that kind of meeting that I thought he just said amazing. And he told me, I have a new artist, we should work with him. And that was the first interactive video we did. I remember it very well because I told him, really, that's what you're giving me? It's this guy with 7,000 followers on Twitter. That's how we measured success then. I think he has now 7 million. And it was amazing for us. It was actually what kickstarted it all for the company. Steve introduced us to everyone from Bob Dylan to David Sable, who just spoke here, and kickstarted everything we did in the company, and not just us, but a lot of different companies, and even not in music, just because, and that was the greatest things that I understood when I came to the US, it's just because he likes Israel. And it was a great thing to find out, because we grow up in Israel thinking it's a problem. I don't know if it's that you go abroad and they tell you don't speak Hebrew. It's dangerous. And then I'm like, oh my God, it's cool to be a Jew.
I had lived in Israel years ago when I was in my early 20s. I was a DJ on the Voice of Peace and lived on the Peace Ship. And I also was a reporter for the English news on Reshet Aleph, so I was very upset last week.
Previously known
when the Reshut HaShidur closed. It was actually...
You're the one that was sad.
No, I'll tell you why I was sad, because, 20 years ago, A.B. Natan sank the Peace Ship, and now Bibi sank the Reshut HaShidur. So everywhere that I ever worked in Israel has been sunk.
His best DJ work was at my wedding, by the way, where he jumped to Who Let the Dogs Out, which was pretty good.
But Yoni was on that story about how we started to work together. What was really nice about launching Andy Grammer's career, and Andy Grammer's a very, very big recording artist around the world now, and we launched him using Yoni's technology, and Yoni launched his technology using Andy Grammer's music. And that really is the perfect marriage of music and technology. And as we all know, there's been a very testy relationship between technology and content and music, in the last decade and a half or so. And yet this was a situation where, in fact, it was a truly mutually beneficial relationship. And, it's exactly the dream that you always have, that you'll find some new technology and, you'll be the first one to use it and launch a new artist and at the same time launch the technology. And we actually pulled off that dream, which was a very exciting thing to have been able to do.
Yeah. So, to summarize, the reason this is so exciting to me is that Steve, who actually, in a way, didn't just introduce me to the music industry here, but to America in general, gave us the first chance to work together. We enjoyed the success together. Has been since been my sounding board and most amazing investor. And he would take a meeting with anyone just because they're Israeli. And to me, I know it sounds weird, but it's just like a lot of times I say you need to win the system playing the current rules if you want to change them. I took advantage of it, and Steve has since then, I've introduced him to dozens of Israeli startups that once in a while I hear afterwards, oh yeah, and he invested in us. So I think that's something that really shows, what as a nation, as an Israeli nation, what unfair advantage we have because he loves Israel and used to DJ at Reshet Aleph.
Right, and at the Penguin Club. But but the truth is that Yoni. Yeah, it's true. I took the meeting with Yoni because I knew that he was an Israeli rock star, and I'd heard his name and heard his music, and was an admirer of what he did. But the truth was that...
Actually, horrible story. The first thing he told me before he connected the Kochav Nolad and everything, he said like, oh, I know you. You're from that song...
Tnulo Chance by Makashor.
Really?
So he's one of the Israeli pop stars whose name is mentioned in that song. But what I was going to say...
They didn't have anything else to rhyme Shalom Chanoch with.
What I was going to say was that what's great about Yoni, I met him because he was Israeli. I agreed to take the meeting, but the truth is that, and anybody who knows Yoni here knows this is really true. Yoni's one of those people who you really, once you meet him, you realize what a brilliant and magical person he is. And at that point, I was happy to open up my Rolodex, my address book, and introduce him to everybody I knew, because I knew that no matter who he met, he would always hit a home run and be a complete superstar with those people. And I've never introduced Yoni to anybody in my life where they didn't thank me for introducing him to them. So
thank you very much.